Scrooge and Marley were business partners for I don't know how many years. When Marley died, Scrooge arranged his funeral, took care of his will, and inherited his share of the company. But Scrooge was not shaken by the sad event on the very day of the funeral. He hurried back to his office to work. Making money was more important to Scrooge than the memory of a lost friend. Oh, what a stingy tightwad of a businessman Scrooge was, hard and cold as steel. The cold within him showed on the outside too. His hair and eyebrows were frosty white, as if his heart was frozen had frozen them. Nobody ever stopped in the street. No beggars asked him for a small gift. No children asked him what time it was. No one ever asked directions of him. Did Scrooge care? No. He enjoyed warning all human kindness to stay away from him. This is how he looks at it. Once upon a time, of all the good days in the year, on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat in his busy office. It was cold, biting, foggy weather. Scrooge kept sitting in his office door, kept his office door open, so that he could keep his eye on the clerk, Bob Cratchit, who sat in his own small gloomy office copying letters. Scrooge had a very small fire, but the clerk was much smaller. "Merry Christmas, Uncle! God bless you!" cried out a cheerful voice. It was Scrooge's nephew, Fred, who had come in so quickly that Scrooge had not noticed him. "Bah!" said Scrooge. "Humbug nonsense! Christmas means nothing to me. What's Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills without money? A time for finding yourself a year older but not an hour richer? Christmas may put money in my pocket," answered the nephew, "but it has always been a good time, a loving, forgiving, pleasant time. Don't be angry, uncle. Come have dinner with us tomorrow." Scrooge said he would not. His nephew left his room without an angry word. In spite of his uncle's meanness, he stopped on his way to give out a Christmas greeting to the clerk, who, cold as he was warmer than Scrooge, for he returned the greeting cheerfully. As Scrooge's nephew was leaving, two other people came in. They were plump, pleasant-looking older gentlemen who were collecting money for the poor. "We ask at Christmas time, a time when those of us who have plenty should share with those who have need. How much do you wish to give us?" "Nothing!" shouted Scrooge. "I wish to be left alone. Good afternoon, gentlemen." Scrooge went back to his work until the time came to close the office. He climbed down from the stool. He saw the clerk put his candle out and put it on his hat. Wait, put his candle out and put on his hat. "You'll want to be off work all day tomorrow, I suppose," said Scrooge, buttoning his overcoat. "Well, I suppose you have the the whole day, but you should be You er, should get to work bright and early day after tomorrow. After a lonely dinner by himself in the lonely tavern, Scrooge left for home. The street was dark and fog fro the frost and wait the fog and frost hung thick around the door. As he was putting his key in the door, Scrooge looked at the door knocker, and not a knocker, but Marley's face. The face glowed with a dim greenish light. It was not angry, but looked at Scrooge, as Marley used to look, with ghostly spectacles turned up on its ghostly forehead, and through the eyes were wide open. They did not move. As Scrooge stared at this strange thing, it suddenly faded away and became a door knocker again. Scrooge was scared. He walked inside, lit his candle, and locked himself in. Double locked himself in. On his nightshirt
Don't
and
scratch your arms unless
he
you put
put a
lotion.
nightshirt and sat down before the fire to have his tea. As he sat there, the bell that hung in the room began mysteriously to swing. It swung so softly. At first it hardly made a sound, but it rang loudly. But then it stopped. Another frightening sound came out, a strange clanking noise down below, as if someone or something was dragging a heavy chain down a heavy chain around. The clinking noise became so much louder. Something was coming up the stairs straight toward his door. It's humbug. I won't believe it. I won't. He changed his mind though. When something passed right through him, the double locked door into the room. As the thing entered, the dying flame in the fireplace leaped up. It was Jacob Marley's ghost. "What's this?" said Scrooge, in the most mean way as ever. "What do you with what do you want with me?" Much it was Marley's voice. No doubt it. Who are you? In in life I was a partner with Jacob Marley. I say humbug. Do not believe in it. Such a nonsense. As the spirit made a frightening cry and shook its chain with an awful noise, Scrooge fell to his knees and shouted, "Horrible phantom! Why do you haunt me? The spirit of every man," the ghost answered, "must walk among his fellow men. It has to wander through the, the world looking at its sad things. It can no longer change. I am a prisoner to the chain. I made it for myself during my life. I choose to put it on, and I choose to wear it. Look at all the things of it's made of. There are things of money and greed. I cannot tell you all that I wish to tell you," said the ghost. "I haven't much time. I cannot rest. I cannot stay long anywhere. When I lived, I did not take the time to be kind to my fellow men. I traveled the world over paying for my mistakes. I have sat invisible beside many days," I continued, the ghost said, "but are allowed to see me. So that I may warn you that you have a chance to avoiding what happened to me. You will be haunted by three spirits. The first spirit will visit tomorrow when the bell strikes one. The second spirit will come the next night at the same time. 1. The third will visit you at the night after the last row of 12. You will see me no more. But for your own sake, remember what I've told you. Then the ghost picked up its chain and walked backward toward the window, which was raising itself. Scrooge could hear a strange noise, sad sounds outside the window. The ghost listened and it joined in the sad sounds, floated out into the night and disappeared. Scrooge closed the window, went straight to bed, and fell asleep. When he woke up, it was dark. He must have slept through the entire day and far into the night. He remembered that Marley said the first spirit will visit when the bell struck 1. When the bell struck 1, the light flashed into the curtains of the bed. Suddenly, Scrooge found himself face to face with a strange figure with long white hair and a robe, and bright rays of light that seemed to burst from the top of its head. "Are you the first spirit, sir, that Marley said would visit me?" asked Scrooge. "I am." The voice was soft and gentle. "I am the ghost of the Christmas past. Rise and walk with me."
Wow.
They moved through the window, passed right through the wall, and stood on an open country road. "Good heavens!" said Scrooge. "I remember this place. I grew up here." Boyhood memories filled Scrooge's mind. They walked along the road, Scrooge remembering every gate and, and post and tree, until they arrived at the school. The children have gone home to be with their families at Christmas. Just one lonely child was left there. Scrooge sat down and and cried, for he saw that the boy was his own poor forgotten self. Oh. The ghost waved its hand, and Scrooge saw himself a little older now. A girl came running in. She put her hands around the boy and called him dear, dear brother. She had come to bring him home for Christmas. Your little sister was a small girl, but she had a big heart. She said the ghost. She died
Oh,
a young woman, but I remember she had a child, your nephew.
what the heck? What the heck? I'm listening. Ah,
Babies. Just a few seconds later they were outside a building where Scrooge had been an assistant while training while training while training hold on while training for his future work. Mr. Wait. Scrooge saw his past self, now a grown-up young man, along with Mr. Fezziwig and another assistant. "No more work tonight," said Mr. Fezziwig. "Christmas Eve. Put everything away, my lads, and let's have lots of room here." In a fiddler came Mrs. Fezziwig, with the three Mrs. Fezziwigs. It came with housemaid, the baker, the cook, and the milkman. Kind old Fedwig had invited them. Soon everyone was dancing. There was games. There was cake and Christmas punch and mince pies. Scrooge watched with excitement. Fezziwig's kindness had costed him nothing but nothing, but it was greater gift than all the money in the world. Suddenly, they were in a different place. Scrooge saw himself sitting with a pretty girl named Belle, who he had once loved. "You have given up on all of your good hopes and dreams," she was saying tearfully. "Money and profit have become the only things you care about. I have thought about a lot of this, and I can't let you go." He seemed to feel like she was probably right. She had left him. They parted ways, and he had no longer seen her since. Now they were in another room, not very large or fancy, but full of comfort. Scrooge saw Belle sitting by the fire with her family. "Belle," said the man, "I saw an old friend of yours this afternoon, Mr. Scrooge. I passed by his office window, and there he sat, all alone in the world. Spirit, take me away from here! I cannot stand to watch it," Scrooge cried as he looked away. He saw that he was back in his own bedroom. He stumbled to his bed and fell into a deep sleep. Scrooge awoke. It must be almost 1, the time Marley had told him the second ghost would visit him. He kept a sharp lookout so the second spirit surprise him. Would not surprise him. But no ghost appeared. The only thing he noticed was a bright light that seemed to be coming from the next room. He walked into the living room, but it was changed. It seemed to be full of Christmas cheer. Holly, red berries, mistletoe, ivy were hanging from the walls and ceiling. There were roaring fire and wonderful food piled up on the floor in the shape of a throne. Relaxed upon the throne was a jolly giant with a friendly face, who held a glowing touch up high to shine its light on Scrooge. "Come in and get to know me better, man," said the ghost. "I am the ghost of the Christmas present." "Spirit," said Scrooge humbly, "lead me wherever you wish. Last night I learned a lesson which I have not forgotten. Tonight, if you have anything at all, teach me and let's gain something from it." "Touch my robe," said the spirit. In a flash they stood in the city streets on a snowy Christmas morning. The sky was gloomy, yet there was a feeling of Christmas, of cheerfulness. All the people they passed, the spirit stopped on the doorstep of a small 4-roomed house. Inside, Bob Cratchit's wife was standing there, setting the table with her daughter, while her oldest son was minding a saucepan of of potatoes. Two smaller Cratchits came tearing in, followed by their older sister, Martha. Finally came came Bob Cratchit, with Tiny Tim on his shoulders. Sadly for Tiny Tim, he carried a little crutch on his legs. He wore an iron brace. The Cratchit gathered around the table. Grace was said they had a wonderful Christmas dinner. When the dinner was done, the whole family gathered. The whole family gathered around the fireplace. Bob sat close to the Tiny Tim, holding his hand tenderly. Then he served hot punch, lifted his cup, and gave a toast. "Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us," said Bob. "God bless everyone," said little Tiny Tim. "Spirit," said Scrooge, with the tiny heartfelt interest and worry he had never felt before. "Tell me if Tiny Tim will live. I see an empty little chair on the corner of the fireplace." Replied the ghost. "If these shadows remain unchanged, this will be the last Christmas we will ever find here." Chestnuts and punch were passed around, while Tiny Tim sang a song. "There is nothing special about this. There are not a rich, fancy clothes, fancy stuff, fancy family. There were holes in their shoes, their clothes were worn out and old, but they were happy and thankful for the time they shared." The ghost and the Scrooge traveled far from many, many homes.
I just want to hear one more part.
Yeah. Mm.
I like hearing you read, though, babe.
Okay.
Dad, is it okay if I wash my body?
The ghost and Scrooge traveled far and visited many homes. In each place, Scrooge saw happy people being kind to one another, full of love, and blessed by the Spirit which whom he traveled in. Each place, Scrooge learned more and more about the true meaning of Christmas. When the clock struck 12, Scrooge looked around for the ghost of Christmas present, but it was gone. At the last stroke of the bell faded away, Scrooge remembered that Marley said the third ghost would come exactly that time. Lifting up his eyes, he saw a dark phantom, shrouded and hooded. The phantom slowly, silently came near and nearer to Scrooge. It filled up the air with gloom and mystery. It held one hand outstretched. The spirit did not speak to me. The spirit did not speak to me. The spirit did not speak or move. "You must be the ghost of Christmas yet to come," asked Scrooge. "Are you going to show me the shadows of the things that have not happened yet, but will happen in the future?" Although Scrooge was quite used to talking to ghosts by this time, he feared that the silent shape so much that his leg trembled as he followed in the shadow. Suddenly they were in the middle of a city business district. The spirit stopped beside one of the little businessmen. and pointed his outstretched hand toward them. No, I don't, said one man. I don't know much about it. Either way, I only know he's dead. It'll probably be a cheap funeral for I swear. I don't know anyone who will go to it. Scrooge did not understand what he had heard, and looked at the spirit for an answer, but it said nothing. Quiet and dark. The ghost stood beside him with its outstretched hand as the scene changed. Scrooge was right next to the bed, on which there lay something covered up. It was the body of a man with no one to watch over it, no one to weep for it. The phantom's hand pointed to the head of the body. The sheet was loosely thrown over it, and Scrooge could have easily uncovered the face. Yet he could not make himself do that. He had just stood there looking at it. Okay. Now the ghost took Scrooge through several streets familiar to him. Before long they came to a poor Satchir's house, and went in. Mrs. Satchir and the children were again seated around the fire. This time the room was very quiet, but once noisy little Cratchits sat as still as statues, looking up at their brother who was reading to him from the Bible. When Bob came in, his wife hurried to meet him, and the two young Cratchits scrambled on to his lap. Bob was cheerful and pleasant. As they gathered around for the fire to talk, he had gone through the cemetery that day to make arrangements for Tiny Tim. It's a green and peaceful place. You will see it often. I promise that Tiny Tim will walk there on Sundays, he said. The ghost of Christmas yet to come led Scrooge to another direction, until they reached an iron gate which was the graveyard. The the man that had died must be buried here, thought Scrooge. Now I will learn his name. The spirit stood amongst the graveyard, pointing directly. Before I go nearer to the graveyard, said Scrooge, answer me one more thing, one question. Are these the shadows of things, or aren't these the shadows that must be, or are the shadows that might be? The spirit said nothing. Scrooge Scrooge kept toward his dark, lonely grave, trembling as he went. He saw a stone, his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge. No, spirit, Scrooge cried. Hear me out. I'm not the man I was because of the lessons I've learned. I have changed. I will be a better person. I will honor Christmas in my heart, and I will try to keep it all year. Oh, tell me, I may wish away the writing on the stone," he finished as he saw the phantom shrink and disappear. In its own place he saw a bedpost. It was his own bedpost, his own bed, his own room. His future was still all ahead of him. There was still time left for him to become a better person. He scrambled out of bed. He looked out the window and laughed. It was Christmas Day. Hadn't missed it. The spirits have done it all in one night. Scrooge dressed in his best, and he wore a happy smile, and he walked through the streets. When he got to his nephew's house, he passed the door a dozen times before he had the courage to knock. But Scrooge felt completely at home within 5 minutes. There was a happiness party, a wonderful party, wonderful togetherness, wonderful happiness. The next morning, Scrooge greeted Bob at the side of the morning office. "Merry Christmas, Bob!" said Scrooge, his clerk. "A merrier Christmas than I have given you for many years. I will raise your pay and try to help your family. Make up these fires and good and warm." Bob Cratchit. Scrooge kept his promise to all and did much, much more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was like a second father. He became a good friend, a good master, and a good man, as the good old city knew, or any other good old city or town or district in the good world. And it was always said of Scrooge that he would know how to celebrate Christmas well as any man alive. And so, as Tiny Tim said, God bless us, everyone.